What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the One's Ready team room. You got Jared, myself, Trent. We're all here. Before we get into this juicy podcast with the commander of STTS, Major Chris Walsh, we are going to talk a little bit about Attack Elite. If you're trying to get into this special tactics life, you're going to need gear that supports you. So go over to attackelite.com. Check out everything that they have. They've got everything for every single assessment selection that you could need. Fins, mask, booties, rope, watches, rucks, anything that you need to support your training. Go on over there, use the code ONESREADY at checkout. You'll get a great discount, and you'll be able to actually prepare exactly how you're going to do an assessment selection and further down the road, like we said with Major Walsh at STTS. So go check it out, attackelite.com. Use our code ONESREADY at checkout.
And is it really everything you need?
Well, it's everything.
What if I wake up though and I'm tired and I need a little?
A little how you doing?
Little hoo-yah?
A little hoo-yah to the hoo-yah. I would definitely go over to cardomax.com and check those guys out. Sean Matson over there crushing it with the immune booster, the energy booster, or energy intensifier rather. They've also got some hydration stuff as well, but it's great. I was actually giving out some of the grape packets of the energy intensifier.
Those are the best.
And I guess I didn't. Nobody read the instructions, and also I didn't say anything, so they thought that you just take it straight. You can, but boy,
part of the selection course is
mix it in some
how
water.
They deal with the liquid.
Yeah,
mix it in some water though.
They took it straight to the dome. It still worked, but boy, they were not happy that I didn't tell them to mix it with water. So definitely do that. They've got some great flavors, great tasting. And they'd also have a promo code One's Ready, so you can get yourself a discount. So check them out, cardomax.com. And now on to Major Chris Walsh, because this is a good one. You guys really want to know about this for all the phase 2 selection and officer stuff, and plenty more. So enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're in the team room and somebody's ding is already going off. That's okay, though. It's amateur hour here. Always is.
Always will be, baby.
Always is. Always will be. Today, we have Lieutenant Colonel Chris Walsh. I appreciate you joining us, sir.
Hey, I appreciate it. I want to fix it in post. I'm still a major, so just it's okay. I appreciate the field promotion. I will, but I'm happy.
I love that you said fix it in post. Like this guy's already like
you're already in.
He's like, oh, hey, I'm not so sure about this podcast, but hey, if we can fix some stuff in post, I have a couple notes for you guys. Fantastic, sir. That's a big flex on the way out.
Well, sir, you and I have known each other. We first met over in the UK.
Yes.
Because you're not a organically grown stow. You were a maintainer officer, if I remember right. I mean, it has been a while, but you were in maintenance, right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. We did meet when you were at the 321st, and I was at the 100th Air Refueling Wing, working in the maintenance group at that time. So yeah, that was actually kind of where my first intro to like really getting to meet ST guys was at. So, I guess you made a good impression because I made the decision to cross train. So, that was a really cool assignment. It was good exposure for me before I just decided to make the leap.
Oh, for sure. Great.
If this Oompa Loompa can do it,
yeah,
I can do it.
The sir is a normal sized human capable of like doing all sort of things.
Sorry, Jared.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Not okay. Well, sir, please do us a favor. Go through your background. I don't know how much of the MXG you want to hit or the maintenance group that you want to hit, but because you did have you went from the MXG, AFSC or the Air Force Specialty Code to then transition into the Special Tactics Officer, what is now a 19Z. And I know that process going through that has kind of changed, but please go through your background. That way we can, get some kind of bona fides out there, and then we'll start getting into kind of what you guys or what you and the team are working on specifically now.
Okay. Yeah. So, I'm going to rewind it all the way back to college because I think this is an important part of my journey getting into ST. So I, went to ROTC at a school called Valparaiso University. Cross town with Notre Dame was kind of where our actual ROTC detachment lived. And then I wanted to be an ST guy right out of the bat. Like that's what I desired to do. I'll tell you, back then, colleges didn't know a whole lot about the process and all this. So I kind of put a package together completely on my own. And frankly, I didn't get picked up for phase one the first time I applied. And I say that to people because, hey, you know, you may fail and it may drive you down a road that's going to make you better down the road. So we can get into that subject later. I have a lot of thoughts there, but ultimately that drove me to becoming a maintenance officer because I didn't get that first pick off the bat, which was a very, very good developmental experience for me because you get put in charge of a lot of folks early on. And they teach you some of these basic things that I think some stow officers straight out the gates don't always get, you know, and like trusting your senior NCOs, knowing that they're the ones that really are the horsepower inside of your squadron and everything. You just had to do that early on. You get 200 people and you're 22-year-old lieutenant, like, who knows nothing about airplanes. You know, you pretty much are like, hey, if I don't listen to them, I'm going to get someone in trouble. So, so that was a good experience. And so then I did that for about 2.5 years. I assessed or went to stow selection, the traditional phase 2, which will be returning here soon, back in 2009 or 2010. And it took me almost a full year to get through the AFPC process before I actually got the cross train complete. So I actually wasn't sure if it was ever going to happen, but eventually.
Why? What was the holdup, sir?
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if it's changed, but at the time, it's very interesting. So my career field was overmanned, or at least at sustainment levels, and I was going into an undermanned career field. The issue, I think, mainly stemmed inside of, you know, being my first assignment and having a DROS with an overseas assignment. So I think that might have been the driving factor. Either way, I actually had, you know, an officer that I looked up to a lot came up and took care of me and helped me, you know, get that process through earlier, which was really nice. So one of those things you try to pay forward as you go down the road. But yeah, that got me into the pipeline, and then, you know, pipeline was long, no real drama there, I guess. That's worth commenting on. I mean, that's a whole other podcast probably.
Yeah. Well, the question we always ask, did you refire anything? Did you fail any schools? Did you get set back at all?
So the only thing I failed in the pipeline, and I don't want this to sound cocky at all, but it was when you do the 3-2-1, you know, pull for test burn, you know, like when you do that at combat control school, I went on the 1 versus the pull or whatever it is, you know. that doesn't sound cocky at all. I failed, and I was like, I'm so mad about that. Yeah. But no,
that doesn't sound cocky at all. That sounds like you didn't know how to count. So the funny thing about saying 3, 2, 1, go is that thing in itself is a countdown. 3, 2, ready, set, go is also 3, 2, 1, go. Just saying. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. So, anyways, I still think about that. Like, how did I mess up the simplest thing I could have done?
That's awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, the pipeline went pretty smoothly. Actually, it was an enjoyable time. So, you know, hard, but you'll always look back on it with fond memories because, you know, it just makes some bonds that you don't get to can't recreate in many other settings. And so then I went from there to the 2-2 STS, deployed out of the 2-2 to Iraq and Syria. I was a mission commander there, and nothing miraculous downrange. Then from there, I went to North Carolina before for a little bit, and then did the WCAP program with bobsled. So I did the Air Force's athlete program for 2.5 years, and then now in command of the STTS down in Florida. So
nice.
So can I ask? I'm sorry, I just want to jump in and go back.
No. Go for it.
What were the expectations as a stow? Like, who gave you the expectations as a stow in the pipeline? Like, what were those expectations? Did you feel that pressure? Did anybody straight up tell you, like, you're not allowed to fail, you should be leading from the front, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was my belief as a stow. So the guys that I heard about coming in, like, I will say we didn't do a very good job at, like, it's something I've been trying to work on. Like, I didn't get a ton of mentorship as a young stow just because you just, like, in my opinion, we just really never saw stows. There was just so few of them. It was like the squadron commander was the guy inside STTS. That has changed. We had a DO too, but so we didn't have a ton of touch points, as many as I think we should have. Either way, it was always like, you are the best, you are the fastest, you should be the fittest. That was my expectation. I mean, I heard the stories about guy Derek Argel. I mean, and I just thought about him, and everyone was like, he was the standard, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, that is what I have to strive to be and try to be the standard at every school I go to. And when everyone's tired, like I pick up another implement and I carry it, and try to get guys through. That was my whole mentality going through the pipeline, which I still think is the right answer. But yeah, so.
Yeah, but once you get on team, right? Like then as you go through the pipeline, you get on team, you have to learn how to start delegating
Correct.
some of those tasks. And coming from where you came from was probably slightly easier, but your relationship, I would imagine, with your teammates that you went through the pipeline with is slightly different than the airmen in the MXG.
Absolutely. That's one of the interesting things about, that was one of the things I craved. So to touch on that point specifically, like the fact that you got to experience and be beside all the guys that you're going to lead to the same level, like you experience the same pain and suffering that everyone else experiences in the pipeline. I wanted that because you can only create those relationships and that bond through that experience. You don't get that in maintenance. And, so that was one of the big driving factors for me to be there. I always wanted to be kind of like a combat leader. Like, I never really did that, but that was my mentality. It's like, hey, you lead from the front. You look back at World War II officers and they're up on the front lines fighting. And, like Chesty Puller talks about his officer casualties were higher than his enlisted casualties. And that was my mentality. Like, that's where you are. So that's what drove me into special tactics. But your mentality definitely changed when you got the pipeline. You're not the guy who does everything all the time because, frankly, you will get incredibly bogged down. And it also robs the enlisted force of that experience of like having to, plan and develop themselves. And with the way we were doing things previously as enablers, like going out as an individual, if you're not a very capable individual, and we don't give you the ability to kind of do all that stuff on your own, you're going to struggle on some of those teams. So, but yeah,
that's right.
So did you have any of those experiences though with other STOs or anything? Like you talked about the senior NCOs in the MXG. I'm sorry I keep talking about this, but like as you developed through this process, did you ever have to like mentor up another? Like because you were a senior lieutenant, first lieutenant, or anything?
Yeah, I was a captain once I graduated. By the time I graduated the pipeline, yeah.
Right. So like, have you ever pulled another STO aside or some senior NCOs and learned them up on the proper way to manage that relationship and who does what and all that other stuff?
I have, I've actually gotten in the ass of a few STOs before. Because, we don't do it enough to each other. I feel like there's, always kid gloves on sometimes. And I don't think that's, they're adults too. So, but yeah, I've definitely brought that experience across and tried to push that down to the guys that came straight out of college and go straight into the pipeline. It's like, hey, here's how we've got to delegate things down and let the NCOs be NCOs. And even in the pipeline, that's valuable, right? Because, you don't know what their experiences is. And this is the environment that they can do it in a place where the consequences are significantly lower if you make a mistake. Like, yeah, we'll do push-ups. But, someone's not going to get hurt or injured or killed if we make a big mistake like that. So that was something I definitely tried to do and not carry the weight. But there were times where I was like, hey, this is going to suck more unless I pick up this rock and just run as fast as I can. And then, that was just the way we're going to get through this. But, it just depends. Situational leadership, I suppose.
Well, you bring up another great point, and it's the difference between enlisted and officers. And I make this joke at work all the time. Like, if I make a mistake, I'm going to get talked to. If my officer makes a mistake, he's going to get fired. So there's another thing with the officers that people out there have to understand. So while the risk is, we put it in hyperbolic terms, right? Like somebody's going to get killed, someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to get injured. But really, you have to worry about what people think of the career field. When you're the officer that commands a team and you walk into a room with other officers, that's an additional risk that you're taking on, is how do people view my entire organization? You might be the only officer that's put in front of people and has to talk through, here's how ST solves problems. Here's what this ST team is going to do for you, the battle space owner. That's a big deal. And we focus on that in the pipeline a little bit. How did you develop those muscles? How did you work yourself into a position where you could be that good combat leader that is also able to step into the room and have that additional sort of responsibility to really like be the leader?
Yeah, I think, it's that what's that quote? It's like, we don't want, if we're not thinking or we're not reading or we're not learning, we're going to have kind of the dumb people leading our military. And
Yep.
I forget the quote. I'll have to look it up. I think you know how I'm referencing.
Yeah.
Regardless, you just kind of have to keep reading. I completely botched that one, but you got to just, keep professionally developing yourself, and you got to get reps at it. Like, even if you are the smartest guy in the world, having that polished ability to go in front of a large audience of general officers very often, because I've done that many, many times as a singular stow in probably many miles. You have to be able to do that by just getting reps. And I think that's good to put people in front of in those situations. And if they fail, they fail. And then you just continue to grow. Like, I don't think failure is a bad thing. It's a place to grow from. Like, I've done that. That's pretty much how I've gotten everywhere. You have to fail to grow. So people that don't, I think, struggle. So I think that's the biggest thing, is putting yourself in those positions. And, I'll tell you a story on that specifically. Like, when I was deployed in Iraq, we were called in to do the planning conference for evacuation, because the Mosul Dam was, at one point, they were concerned it was going to, explode, and the whole, southern part of Iraq was going to get flooded. And so there was going to be a plan on how to get people out of some of the airfields. And so there's these massive planning conferences across all of CENTCOM, essentially. And you're the only Captain Stowe addressing, all these generals and everybody as, like, here is the ground truth and here's the plan. And you're doing that in front of the big audiences. That's pretty intimidating. But frankly, all you got to do is know, hey, you and your NCOs did the right thing, and they gave you the good information, and they've got a good plan, and you just take that plan forward and convey it, and make sure you're conveying the risk appropriately, because that's the biggest thing. Don't sign on to shit that you actually can't do, and that's going to put your guys in a bad position. So.
Yeah, and people get that screwed up all the time. I have talks about risk all the time. There's always three risks, right? There's risk to mission. Is this mission going to fail? Risk to force. Are my people going to get hurt? But there's also risk of inaction. And people tend to outweigh that risk of inaction. They're like, if I don't do anything, then, the world is going to blow up. Like, you have to be able to look at a process and be like, well, what if we didn't do anything? What if we just waited? Why now is a great thing to ask during mission planning. Like, okay, what are we going to do and why now? So you developed yourself through the pipeline, and you got some of those reps underneath your belt at the 321st. And here you are after the WCAP program, which is outstanding, by the way. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but how did you like the WCAP program? Because that's awesome.
I mean, it's tough, because I look at it as a phenomenal experience, but I'm also incredibly disappointed because it didn't end the way I wanted it to.
Sure. Which is obviously the Olympics, right?
Yeah. And I know that's quite a threshold to have set for failure or success, right? Go to the Olympics or don't. I think a lot of people fall below that line. But
right. It's such a funny thing. Like, inside of this forum here in the team room with just the four of us, man, I hear you. Like, you achieved to the highest level, and there's still a part of all of us who are like, oh, I guess you didn't get to the Olympics. Like, we're gonna give you crap about it, but you're already giving yourself crap about it.
I was like, all right, I have to go back and face all these dudes, and I didn't make the games. And
absolutely. And the fact that you're a stow is statistically impossible. The fact that you've deployed and you didn't get hurt, you led your teams bravely through combat, is statistically impossible. The fact that you got accepted to the WCAP, statistically impossible. And here we are talking about, oh, I can't believe you didn't make the Olympics. What a nerd. What a nerd. I can't believe it. Well, that's fantastic, Sarah. And obviously, like, we would love to see you in that, but man, if that's part of your story, it'll happen, and that's dope. After the WCAP program, though, here you are. You're now the commander of STTS, probably one of the most influential organizations inside of AFSOC. And I say that because, for those of you that aren't tracking, the schoolhouses, the courses of initial entry, assessment selection, combat control school, STTS, the apprentice course at Kirtland, those drive more tactics, techniques, procedures, training, manning. Those drive more discussions. You have more influence in those positions that people even understand. And here you are now in I think I'm supposed to say that we're in an inflection point here in ST, and you're one of the people that's driving that train. So tell us about how, just right when you showed up to STTS, how did you feel about taking that position?
It's funny because, I will tell you, candidly, becoming a squadron commander was like not on my career plan. And I think a lot of stows may say that, but sure, I think it's ultimately where you end up. And, frankly, I was initially supposed to go be the DO. It's actually a funny story. I get like a text from the wing commander the day after Christmas, and I was like, hey, I need you to give me a call. And I turned to my wife and I was like, I'm about
Terrible.
to get promoted to commander right now.
what was your heart rate? 195.
I was like, here we go. This is great.
Getting that text for DS, just like, hey, no big deal. Just give me a call. Oh, okay, tight.
Yeah, this is good. What did I do wrong?
Right. Yeah.
But,
just report to the principal's office real quick.
Yeah. No, but actually, since I've taken it on, it is a really badass job, and mainly because of the things exactly that you're talking about, like the impact that you can have, and the things that was like, hey, I had issues with these when I was in the pipeline, and now there's really no excuse. If I don't fix it or take it on and try to take action on it, then I'm part of that problem. So
that's right.
I've really appreciated having that opportunity to kind of to take control, and then it's also cool how you can positively impact people's careers and set a culture. Like all that stuff is entirely valid, and either things that frustrate you as a stow with other leaders that you may have had in either career fields, that I've been a part of. You're like, well, now it's time for me to take all those lessons and put them in action in a positive way. And granted, I will make my own mistakes and learn and grow from it, but generally speaking, at least I have a lot of the what not to do and what to do examples that I've experienced so far. So, the one thing when I showed up, this is I immediately walked in the squadron again, and I hadn't been there in a while, like 10 years, I guess. And I come in and the paint is the same color, and
the same pictures are up on the wall.
Statues are in the front, and I was like, all right, the desk in the commander's office is in the same place. And I was like, okay.
It smells the same. It smells exactly the same in the schoolhouse. Nothing. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I get it, but that was one of those things that's like, I want that to change, because this is kind of the pinnacle of excellence, in my opinion, of our pipeline, and you should come through here, and there should be a lot of pride and ownership here. So that's an initiative that we're trying to work through at the squadron to get, obviously mission comes before beautification things, but that's kind of at the top of my priority list is to keep that stuff at the forefront, because I think it matters. Like you go to the Olympic Training Center, for example, like, man, you're proud when you walk through those doors. Like I look at STTS in a very similar light. It's like, hey, this is where you're coming to get your graduate level, degree in special tactics stuff before you go off to do your master's training to be a 7 level. So, master's degree, and then your graduate level at the end there, but a PhD. So, anyways.
No,
I know stuff about education. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm educated.
I know smart. I know school things.
Yeah,
I read books.
Take a small step back real quick, because you talked about how the influence in shaping the future of special tactics, whether it's PJ, combat controller, SR, even the TACPs that ended up going through STTS. And you recognize the importance of that, having been in for so long now. But you do have staff sergeant, tech sergeant, and even a few master sergeants as instructors. And most of us, we rarely want to leave the teams, because we want to keep deploying, we want to keep training. Sometimes, people do need to take a break, and they'll raise their hand and say, hey, I need to take a break, but which is great and encouraged. But sometimes guys just don't want to go be an instructor, so they're kind of bummed about it. But one of the things, I would try and tell folks at the 2-2 is, when I'd send them to be instructors, like all those things that you said that you went through that you didn't like, that you were like, man, this kind of sucks, or not sucks, but just like this could be done better kind of thing. And maybe some of the trends that you're seeing in some of the guys that arrive at the team, as an instructor, whether you're in the pipeline or you're at STTS, this is your chance to change or influence and shape the career field. Have you been able to, or how do you specifically kind of impart that mental shift for them at STTS?
Yeah, no, you're 100% spot on with that. I think on that, to a kind of a tangent on it, the quality of people that we're getting into the career field, I don't think has changed necessarily. I think the thing that we need to remember is how we develop them throughout the pipeline is what we're going to get at the end product, right? And when I talk to guys, especially newer instructors coming in, and I kind of give them my philosophy on how I want STTS to look and how I want this training to feel, and want it to be difficult and challenging, not just, hey, you come sign off line items and we'll get you a 5 level. No, I don't. Yeah. But, I know people value that from a programmatic standpoint, but I don't value that, frankly. Like, I would rather you go out here with 50%, no line on it, but you're fucking really good at shoot, move, and communicate, and you can do your job well. We can chase that stuff later. Frankly, it's that's a whole nother topic. But so I tell them that. I'm like, hey, you remember your young guys coming in, and they're not, they come to the team, and you're like, man, this guy doesn't know how to do this or that, and he seems pretty immature. It's like, well, that happened because either his instructor didn't give a shit, or it's so bogged down and they didn't give him attention enough to shore up those and put him in positions to fix those qualities in himself and challenge him. So, and I think when you frame it in that perspective, they're like, yeah, you're right. I'm essentially building the next generation of warriors for our community. And if we don't do it correctly, then, we pay the dividends down the road, and generally that's paid in blood, and we don't want to do that. So that's kind of the way I like to frame it.
Well, from my time as an instructor too, and I think people get it twisted all the time to take some of the kids' words, right? So people will get to the units, and then the people on team at the units will look at these young operators and go, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is doing X, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me just frame this. At STTS, you have about 150 students. At Kirtland, it was about the same. So it's, anywhere between 125 to 200 students at any given time. If that student never got in trouble, if that student never required my attention for me to really dig in and give them individual attention, there isn't enough time in the day. So these other the guys on team, I always frame it to them like this, be like, hey, you got that individual attention from that instructor because you were enough of a screw up that we had to talk to you directly and give you personal attention to fix your problems. That's where you think like not everybody is getting this individualized attention. We're trying to get there, but it's still a massive bill to pay for those instructors each and every day to give more. They already give so much of themselves. They're there 2 hours before the students. They're there 2 hours after the students. They're engaging on problems. Sometimes one or two students take up 80% of your given attention on any given day because they need the most input. And there's a huge portion of the middle that you just have to trust the process, and hopefully they figure it out. So, anytime that I hear the team guys poo-poo, oh, these new students are X, or, oh, back in my day, I was Y. Well, that's because you were a problem child there, Master Sergeant Controller. That's why you felt like you had a bunch of it. Yeah, exactly. And they
got to be a controller.
Well, just because
why.
It just PJs are the same. It's just I guess we're like, hey, why does this guy not know how to hacky sack? And this guy obviously doesn't eat organic food.
Yeah.
I don't know what jokes I'm supposed to make about it.
No, that's valid.
Since we're talking about STTS, what are some of the big rocks you're moving? I know that there's one in particular that we want to hit, and I don't know if you want to hit that now, but I know that STTS is always kind of trying to move like three massive boulders at one time. So I'm just going to throw it out there, and you pick and choose whatever boulder you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think we'll just jump into the one right off the bat because it's pertinent. But one thing, when I came in, I was like, hey, so when are we doing the next phase 2 stow selection? They're like, oh, we don't do that anymore. And I was like, oh, what? So, that was a decision that was made to, with stand up at the training wing. Like I wasn't really that connected to the normal community when all this was happening. So I was a bit removed and kind of came into it with, fresh newborn eyes. Like, okay, we're looking at it with not experiencing it. So I kind of get to look at it at face value. So, when we kind of dug into that, we weren't making the accession needs to sustain the stow career field. Like we just weren't getting enough guys. And there's a lot of reasons why, when the timing of the thing was, when you line it up with spring breaks and colleges and when guys from the academy can go, like it's a challenging process. We send our enlisted folks to this fucking heinous, excuse my language, just heinous selection after years and years.
How dare you? How dare you, sir? This is it.
Very unofficer of me, but and it just wasn't it wasn't a good process when you consider all the factors that go into getting someone the opportunity to assess for the career field. So we dug into it a bit more. It was one of the first things I pitched up to hire was like, hey, I'd like to relook at stow selection, but at the time, they're like, no, it's just moved over to Special Warfare Training Wing. and then kind of came to light very quickly, like, hey, this isn't meeting our needs. And so I was like, okay, we're back at this conversation. So that being said, as a quick background, we have changed the process on how our One Zulu career fields are able to apply and cross over to the officer side. There's a whole application for it, but it is now a traditional phase 1 package that they'll put through, which has a bit more flight commander input type items in it, because that's very pertinent to the application, we believe. And then there'll be an in-person phase 2 selection that will happen. So dates on that, like those packages will be due like 3 January. Obviously it's across, I know it's across the, I'm not going to say there's a grace period, but I'm also a realist. So, you know,
Sure.
It is over the holidays is when this is kind of really come into action. So, you know, I understand that. So if you want to apply, just communicate that to your command teams. We'll work through it.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure we'll get this out pretty fast. If
and we pushed
as fast
out
as possible.
Yeah, we pushed it out to the command teams. I don't know if it's come down. I know that, you know, on your side, you're in a different situation than the other squadron, being in a commit situation. And then at the end of January, we'll do a phase 2 selection. But that selection is not geared towards like, hey, can this guy do pool skills, and is he really good at running fast? Like we're looking at leadership qualities, intellectual ability, you know, reading, writing, you know, briefing, mission planning, like the things that the officership skills, like we know at this point you're a capable operator, or you should be. And if you should be, you're getting a recommendation from your commander. So they're saying, hey, this is a capable NCO that wants to come be an officer. So I'm not really that worried about, hey, are you good at running a 5-minute mile? Like,
Right.
It's not that important to me at this stage in your career. But I am worried about, like, hey, do you have the mental, you know, horsepower and the general leadership skills to do this job and be the right person to take the career field forward? Like that's the important thing, is it's not just like, hey, are you a smart, well-polished person? It's like, hey, can you think critically and take the career field in the right direction in the future, and have that type of, you know, foresight. So I think that's what we're doing with that piece of it. And so if there's specific questions there, I can field them real quick.
So do you give them the demo test where you have to count down, or? Yeah,
that's a big one.
that's the one.
They let me slip through, so you know we're not going to let that happen again.
So right off the bat, since we're kind of on a truncated time schedule here, where do folks go to get that package or for phase 1?
Yeah, so it should be on the Aspect Warfare website, and Air Force Special Tactics.com, I think, are the 2 websites. I don't know the addresses offhand, but
I'll get them and we'll put them up.
The standard,
there's a banner going to be below this, and I'll put it on there.
Yeah. So those 2 places, and then we've emailed this out. I've communicated to all the command teams directly. Like, here is the package, and here are the eval letters and all that stuff that you have to attach to it. That is with command teams at this time. So. And again, you know, if you guys specifically have people that, you know, want to do this and they don't have the info, reach out to me. You can also email the 24 SAO assessments org box. I can get you that email address. That is where all the packages go for every STO selection. And that will be a place to communicate, and we can get you information through there. So.
Yep. I'm looking at AspectWar.com right now. You can go and you can hit the STO recruiter at us.af.mil. There's a frequently asked questions on there. So that's AspectWar.com. So sto.recruiter at us.af.mil.
That's right. Yeah.
So you kind of stepped into this position at a weird time. We have 19 Zulus changed since you went through. 1 Zulu's changed. The pipeline changed. What's it like working through all this change? And what are the 1 Zulus going to have to go through the entire pipeline again? I know this is 2 separate questions that I'm asking, and they're not related at all.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to put it in perspective of all the things that are happening right now, all the chaos. And then like, you're also trying to like get this process nailed down.
Yeah. So I'll answer the second part first, because it's a little easier to answer. So generally speaking, no, they won't repeat all of the pipeline. So it'll be kind of situationally dependent, like a pararescue man that comes across to become a STO. There may be 1 school that we want them to just get a touch point with, just so they have it. Like, hey, they may need to go to CCS because there's a lot of core stuff that we do that is important. They obviously don't need to go to dive. They don't need to do all that other stuff, but that's just an example. And so that will be piecemealed. Obviously, the controllers will be pretty clean. Like they've done everything that the STO has done, so that's a pretty clean one. But all the other 1Z career fields, if they're combat dive qualified and the TAC-Ps, unfortunately, are not included in this in the same way. Like they can come and apply, but they're going to go through the traditional STO application process. And they're going to go to the traditional phase 2 and then through the entire pipeline. So no hate there in any way. It's just, that was the decision that we made. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah,
people don't understand it. We went through this at the schoolhouse too when I was there. So right around 2013 through 2015, they were doing this thing where they would just let you be a pararescueman. If you were a team leader, you'd basically like audit like 1 or 2 blocks of the apprentice course, and then poof, you're an officer. Man, that was a disservice to both the officers and the enlisted. Yeah. Like if you're a PJ team leader, you are not a crow. You are not an officer, and vice versa. You would never dream to train a crow and then just be like, oh, you want to be a PJ? Like if we were able to renounce commissions, and if everything was, for this hypothetical, man, they're separate jobs. It's a separate course. Like there's no hate to the TAC-P guys. You're going to a new job. You're going to be expected to do, like I would expect a PJ team leader. I don't care how good you are in combat. I don't care what your experience is. If you want to be a STO, that's a different career field, my guy. Yeah. You got to pay your dues. You got to go to CCS. Cause I would say the same thing. Like if a combat controller wants to go be a crow, sorry, you pay your fees and you take your chances and you go to Kirtland and you go through the course. Like 100%. That's just what it is. Yeah. So man, I'm in violent agreement with you there, sir. I'm glad that you guys made that change.
Yeah. And, I mean, it is valuable developmentally wise, and there's just things you don't pick up, like to teach everyone that everything you learn in CCS kind of through osmosis while you're in the career field is not the right answer. Cause you're making decisions. That's right. You kind of need to know that stuff up front.
That's right.
It's an easy one. And then I'll touch on the 19Z piece, and then I'll circle back to the more broad question that you gave me, like what's it like to be in the institution during change. But so for your traditional 19 Zulu assessment, like phase 1, phase 2 assessments for people who are cross-training for other career fields in the Air Force, even other branches, and then, our cadets at ROTC and the Academy. So that same place where Aaron just mentioned, that website, that package, the phase 1 package is going to happen. Then we'll have that phase 2 here in the spring. We haven't nailed down the exact dates. I mean, we have a rough one, but I'm not going to put it out. But that stuff is being communicated to the detachments. And so they'll do phase 1, then we'll have a spring and fall assessment and selection where they'll come out here and they'll get the experience, and we'll see, what everyone's made of. And so, and that's kind of, we're going back to the way I experienced it. Exactly the same thing. There's a slight tweak procedurally in there, which is kind of irrelevant to the public, but that's the only change. And that's really just who's managing the phase 1 hiring piece or invitation piece. But other than that, it's going to be everything you've known about phase 2 prior with enlisted, cadre members, officer cadre members, and you're coming here and you're gonna, we're gonna test your mettle and see, what you have, and then that allows us. The important thing there is that allows us to get guys assessed, selected, and we get them their sessions straight into our career field, so we kind of get a hold of them early, and then I can manage their pipeline at STTS. At least that's the plan. That could change a little bit too of where they live during the pipeline process, but that's not been decided yet. So
if I don't ask this question, we're going to get accused of not actually asking the question, because everybody wants very specific answers to everything out there in the internet verse. What specifically are we looking for, like those attributes for the candidates trying to come over and become a STO? Like they always want to know like exactly what it is. And I know it's a ridiculous question, but like what are we looking for very specifically?
Yeah. So, I mean, the ST attributes apply to everybody. I mean, that's officer and enlisted. So I could list them off for you, but I know that they're out there and I know them by heart, but
right.
Those attributes we value and will continue to value for everybody. Beyond that, I look at, we've talked about a while for like, hey, physical preparation isn't everything. But in my opinion, you're demonstrating to me how serious you took your preparation for this career field. And frankly, if you don't come in and you're not exceeding kind of the base minimum standards, I read into that pretty heavily, especially as a cadet. And, I know I went through it, and I know I was a maintenance officer doing 12-hour shifts and still training and coming and performing. And I know it's challenging, but, it shows kind of where your priorities are and how bad you really want to be here. So I look at that as like, hey, your fitness has to be really, really outstanding. And that's just kind of your entry point. Beyond that, then we're talking about, hey, what leadership qualities you have? Are you kind of a selfless leader, and can you think critically, and do you have kind of the right mental horsepower? And we test IQ and all those things, so that's an important piece of it. And having the right mentality for the job. And not everybody, like, there's smart people out there who are just very narcissistic and self-serving and will not be a good officer.
I'm right here. I can hear you. Like, why? Like, I don't know why you have to be so mean. You're on our podcast. You're coming.
We're all thinking it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too. Yeah. If you're trying to beat me to the bottom of this, no way. I'm going to beat you there. We were having a discussion. We have a Discord that is awesome. So, a couple hundred people big. And, we were having this discussion last night. I was trying to, we asked straight up, we're like, hey, what questions would you want to ask the STTS commander? Some of them were silly, like little things that we're not going to address. But one of them was to your point here. They were asking, why is the physicality requirement different? And I framed it like, hey, the officers have this pre-selection, because if you come in as an officer and you do like the enlisted IFT numbers, like if you're like mid-range on there, you're automatically in the bottom 10% of any officer selection. Like, you're expected to have, for all the reasons that you said. We are looking for physical freaks. We want people that are absolutely insanely good shape. But it shows the work and the dedication that we're looking for. That's more, it shows that you're willing to prepare and to go forward and actually succeed at this thing. We talked a little bit about, the personality traits of a good leader, and you just hit on it there. I just want to unpack it a little bit. So what are some of those personality traits that when you see it, you're like, that's a good ST officer?
That's a very specifically broad question.
Just describe yourself and it'll work out.
No, I don't know about that, but I think one of the big things is, I mentioned selfless leader. Leaders eat last. Those like Simon Sinek. He talks about that. I think that's a very good mentality, right? So you're gonna struggle because, hey, you are, young. I struggled with this. Everyone does. You're a young, capable, fit dude. You're like, hey, I want to get out here and hack the mish or whatever, however you want to say it. I was ready to, like, hey, I want to go down range and be a JTAC and do combat things. Like, that was not because I wanted to be an individual, but that just is where the opportunity existed. But during my time as a team leader, I had to prioritize my enlisted forces development over my own development because, hey, I would get one rep at this, right? Potentially at best. But, one of these senior airmen may go do this 3 or 4 times. And if I take one of those reps away, and I know there's different mentalities here, but this is how I think about it. I'm robbing them of that experience. And that's really their job, is to be the tactical experts. And I can be doing other things that only I can do. Like, obviously they can go be JTACs as well, but they can't go advocate and learn and be, the future, lead the career field in the right direction down the road. So I had to remember, like, hey, there's only things I can do as an O that I should be doing. And if I'm not doing those and I'm trying to do what my enlisted force is doing, then I'm kind of missing the point and I'm doing them a disservice. And so, I didn't finish. I went to SOTAC, and this is just a personal story, but I didn't finish MQT mainly because I was running the team, and I was like, hey, we had 2 other STOs in MQT, and they're younger guys. And I was like, all right, all of us can't do this. And I talked to my commander. I was like, hey, is there a chance I'm going down range as a JTAC? And he's like, no, probably not. And so I was like, okay. I was like,
thanks for being honest with me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I said, okay, well, then I pulled myself out of the program, and I said, okay, well, I'll prioritize other people's training over what I would have desired to do. And, some of those guys got to go have that experience, and it was very good for them. So
nice.
Not tooting my own horn in any way, but that is kind of the mentality I think you have to have, is like, realize it's not really about you. Like, yeah, you are a strong, fit person, but that's not why we're hiring you to be the best operator in the world. We're hiring you to be the best leader that we can have. And that isn't always what you want to have happen, if that makes sense.
True, but I do think it is important for, I do think, because you at least experienced it a little bit. You may not have finished, IQT, MQT, and gotten your JTAC qualification, but whether it's JTAC or whether it's something else, I do think it's important for officers to at least, whether they finish 100%. Or not, at least chase it, because when you do have a senior airman, staff sergeant, tech sergeant saying like, hey, I need this kind of training or, this piece of equipment, I mean, you can continue on and on with it, but if you haven't experienced it yourself, you're kind of like, of course you want that new shiny thing, or of course you want to go to this badass school. But if you had experienced it and been, whether it's downrange or in training, you're like, no, actually that piece of kit or that training would have benefited me massively. Mm-hmm. And so, absolutely. Like that is worth putting squadron or group resources, funding, equipment, and stuff like that towards, and putting time towards, because without that experience, you just kind of be like, well, yeah, of course you just want to go buy this thing and, in an environment that we're in right now, like that's tough.
That's that's a really good point. That if I were to tell anyone, hey, that's really just kind of having the ground truth, right? Like knowing what the ground truth is, and you may get to experience it. And I think that is the best way to do it is through experience, but it's also the trust of like, your senior NCOs and your NCOs to tell you the ground truth. But, the book, my favorite leadership book, The Mission, the Men and Me, I'm sure you guys have brought that up with people, but absolutely. There's that story that they talk about early on when, they're in the invasion of Iraq and, there's generals that talk to them what to do. Yeah. The ground force commander's like, hey, this is not the right answer. You lose, like, it's very important to be cognizant that as you go up in your career, you start to lose a little bit of connective tissue there. And it's good to understand like, hey, I've got to trust and maintain that trust. And that helps them trust you that as well, that they're giving me the ground truth, and I have to listen to that. Because if I start to think like, hey, in my mind, you don't need this piece of kit because I think you're just trying to spend money and have more Gucci gear, that could be a life-saving piece of equipment that you didn't really understand because you just haven't been there for a while. So
that's facts.
Yeah.
That's facts. And I don't know when have you gone to the 04 course where you guys are required to get a lobotomy and forget everything that you ever learned in the team room? Or are you not there yet?
Same time as the chief course.
It does. Yeah. They run them concurrently. Yeah. They absolutely
I haven't completed it yet. So I guess I'm still,
That's why we agree so much, sir. So what other lessons have you learned from leading this highly, highly specialized, high performing team? Like we talk about leadership and, I want to talk about how we develop leaders, right? Because people ask us all the time, how do I prepare, for these things? You talk about, physicality is easy, doing more push-ups, running faster, lifting more weight. That's easy. You can get there at any time, right? But how do we, I want to talk about how do we make a better leader? How do we help people prepare for those attributes that we're looking at? But I want to open it up with what leadership lessons have you learned from leading these high performing teams?
Yeah. So I'll touch on the physicality thing one more time, and just mainly because it's not about like, hey, you're a physical stud. It's just, I think the big thing is it allows you to think and perform under immense amounts of pressure, right? Like,
yep.
I'll give a correlation to my personal life with racing. Like, do you need to be super fit to drive a race car? Maybe not in the reality of it. And I do this a lot, but what it allows you to do is it is physical, and then it's high stress and high, speed environment. And you get to make decisions, and your mind stays pretty calm throughout that. And you're not panicking because you're not worried about your own self-preservation. That's the big piece of
it.
Anyways, so to continue forward, I think when you're talking about leading high performing people, there's only really a handful of things. One, give them good intent and purpose. Like if you give them a why, it comes back to why. Like, why the hell do we need to do this? And why do we need to do it now? And why is it a priority to the squadron? And why should it then be a priority to me or the force at large? I think generally, if your why is rooted in the things that we value as human beings, Americans, and then, Air Force Special Tactics operators, then they're going to buy into it. Once you get the buy-in, just get out of their way is really all it is. like make sure that you give them that and the intent and purpose and say, hey, here's what I want to see happen. I don't need to sit there then and give you a 1-page bullet paper of like exactly how to get there. Like, I know you will figure that out. I will guide you and keep you within the right boundaries to make sure it's legal and moral. And we'll get to the end state we're looking for. Yeah. But I don't have my own time to invest into every problem that comes around and if I try to do it by myself, we'll do one thing really well. But if I let the team run it, man, we could do 10 things really well and really progress the unit in a massive way versus, my own individual being involved in every single little detail of everything. Like micromanagement, as we've heard, it is not the way to lead. And you don't need to do that with people that are very self-motivated. So that's right.
Couldn't agree more. Sir, as you look back at your career though, that first phase 1 failure, you got rejected for your first phase 1 application. How did that inform your perspective moving forward throughout your career? And how often does that come up and those lessons come up as you deal with people and personalities and things that they're going through and also personal things that you're dealing with?
Yeah. I was very immature when I started college. And so like my grades didn't do well. Like I'll admit, like I was not this. I think what people see is like, hey, he's accomplished these things. And like, he obviously has always been incredible. I was like, that's bullshit. Anyone that you see who's highly successful has had a period of failure. I would argue.
Oh yeah.
And, so that experience, phase 1 was like really like, eye-opening. I was like, okay, I need to get my shit together. If I really want to do something like this, then I need to take my personal development and myself to a level I'm not at yet, clearly. And that came down to specifically like there's some attention to detail things in the package. There was just general lack of leadership experience. They're like, hey, you just haven't done much yet. And so go be an officer in the Air Force and then come back and apply. That was literally the feedback I got. They're like, hey,
oh wow,
go be an officer in the Air Force and then apply. We want you to reapply, but you're not ready yet. And tough to hear. Don't get me wrong. I was upset. But frankly, it was probably the best thing that could have happened because I really did get a lot of experience that was very, very helpful. And then I was very prepared and mature to manage the pipeline and, being married and all the other stuff that, life throws at you. So I think that's the big thing is like putting yourself in a position to potentially fail. And if you fail, understand like it's just an opportunity for growth. It's not the end of the world. I mean, even with the Olympics, like, hey, I failed. It sucked a lot and still sucks. It bothers me a lot all the time, but it was an opportunity for growth. And I got to, I've got a lot of positive has come out of it as well. So,
yeah. There's only, I mean, I know it's a disappointment, sir, but like that is,
we don't need to hang on that point. But
yeah. We won't hang on it, but like,
it's a big failure.
It's not like it keeps you up at night or anything. The fourth time you mentioned it.
But I mean, just right off the bat, it's a huge accomplishment. We kind of alluded to other big rocks that you guys are doing at STTS. Obviously, officer selection being probably one of the largest. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to at least hit a couple of the other things that like we aren't even tracking. So what are some of the other things you guys are working on at STTS?
Yeah, so I've got a pretty grandiose vision about how I think training should be generally restructured inside of ST. I'm not going to get super deep into it because I'll definitely be driving out in front of my headlights. But some of the stuff we're doing internal squadron time now that's exciting and I think is needed. One, we haven't been doing F&Ps for a while. Right. So getting the full mission profile thing back in, which is really important, especially on the officer NCO development. You're talking planning, rehearsing, all the stuff that goes into doing an actual real world mission. If you don't do that in the pipeline and the first time you're doing it is on training iterations or with, joint partners, like you're way behind the power curve.
Very much so.
That's right.
Wanting to do that earlier and more often is something that we've started. And then taking it to a level where, looking at the future threats that are facing our force and the nation. It's like, hey, I don't need you guys going after single individuals and a road with some AKs. Like I need you doing force on force maneuver tactics, like setting up bases of fire, understanding how to ambush, how to flank, like fighting a like-minded, like-capable force is important. And so that's something that, hopefully with this, one of the teams is currently in training, when they hit their culmination exercise, we're going to have, the plan is to have another team that's in training as well, kind of have their own planning period where they're going to plan a defense and we're going to have them on the offense, and then they're going to go head to head. And there's a high probability.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Let's go.
So there's a high probability there'll be failure. And that's, to me, I welcome it because it's a great opportunity to learn, and there's no better place to do it. So yeah, that's where we're driving to. If we'll get there in this next class, I'm not sure, but what we've done is kind of stood up a small development cell inside of the squadron to just focus solely into that effort, because it is going to take a bit of planning and coordination. But yeah, I think it's the righteous thing to do. And when you're talking about fighting Chinese or Russian forces, like right now, we're relying on things like air superiority. Like we need to rely on the ability to win gunfights, and I don't know if we're there right now as a force. Not to say we don't have the capability, we just haven't been preparing in that manner. So that's one thing. The other thing I've tried to bring into the squadron is, a sense of competition. So like we're starting to have like a best operator deal inside of the squadron, internal to the teams in training. And then we put it out so that it is official. We're going to do like a best operator ranger competition style thing for all the 2-4 South.
Nice.
Which is going to be pretty cool. And we're planning that. I'll execute in April. But yeah, that's a pretty big deal. And, I think that's just kind of like, hey, we got really capable dudes. I've always wanted to go to the Ranger competition. And I was like, well, we should just do our own thing, right? Let's
get it.
Let's be proud of our soldiering skills, and let's go, show the world what we're capable of. And that's going to be a pretty big event around. I think there's a ball happening as well. So those are some of the exciting things. And then, some of the other stuff that's a bit more mind numbing, but valuable is how we track student feedback and performance, and how that student feedback and performance then goes forward to squadrons. And that's they have kind of a body of growth that you can visibly see throughout their entire time as an ST Airman.
That's awesome.
That's something that we've lacked. It's like, hey, you do well in the pipeline, or you don't do well in the pipeline, more importantly, and then they show up at squadron like, well, what was this guy like? Yeah. Like, I don't know. You're relearning all the bad things that we could have given you a heads up on that he needs help with.
Yeah.
So
I've seen that from both sides. As the guy that graduated these teams, like unless somebody pinged me directly and wanted to talk, no kidding, about this person, like, hey, how did Johnson do in the pipeline? And unless I could like bring up in my head, they had problems with this, like that's valuable input that you need. You never want to, I always want to let people, especially graduating the pipeline, like you get to come on team with a fresh slate. You get to, be your own operator. You get kind of like a fresh start, like every unit, you get to kind of reinvent yourself as an operator, and you get to be, whatever. I think there's value in that, but there's way more value in understanding who you are as a person, seeing your learning history, knowing what you struggled with, because I can then be a better supervisor to you. I don't have to spend 6 months, a year figuring these things out, because I don't have a year to figure it out. We might be in the committed phase right when you get there. I might have 2 months with you before we go down range together. So we need to know that. That's an awesome initiative.
Yeah, and really, kind of the idea is like, hey, like you're saying, it's to give the line units the ability to right off the bat be like, hey, I know this guy is struggling in these attributes, and it'll be rooted in the ST attributes, just so it's all kind of tied, connective tissue to how you've been assessed and selected. And so those attributes will continue to value throughout your career. And we can say, oh man, you need to develop a bit on your communication or, your leadership or whatever it is. And that's the things that we can then give you focused feedback, and versus jumping into a training cycle. And you're like, man, I just need you to show up on time to things right now. And I can't really think about what is it that you need as an individual. At least the flight command teams will have that ahead of time. So
nice.
Man, I'm excited for where STTS is going. Did you have something else that you wanted to, another thing you guys were working on?
Let me think. No, I think that's the stuff that I'll speak to now. Hopefully, when we talk again in the future, then I'll have a few more initiatives that have taken shape. But yeah, there's some exciting institutional level change items that we're working through that are just not mature enough. Nor do I think I get in trouble if I talk about it at this point. But
yeah, for sure.
Well, I got to say, sir, like I think it's awesome, and I got pretty excited when I was at Herbie a couple months ago, and Rosie took me back because we're going to have Rosie on as well
cool.
In early 2023. Great. But like he showed me the wall, the magical wall of the whiteboard of everything that's going on, and it was pretty exciting to see, and also to see. Some of the challenges you guys are working for, because I know that we've kind of only talked about the positive here.
Yes.
What people don't understand, and whether they're students or whether they're, other folks out in the career field, is all the other, like, this is just positive you're hearing. Yes. All the other challenges, whether it's, resource constraints, manning constraints, funding, all that kind of stuff are all hurdles that you guys are navigating on a daily basis. And things, special tactics and SOCOM and stuff like that does move fast for the military. But even then, in the grand scheme of things, like, it's still a slow moving machine. Right. So, so as we part, sir, I would like to ping you about what kind of advice you would have for any, future young officers or current officers that would like to join our ranks.
Yeah, I think first off, if this is something you're very interested in doing, I will tell you that it is incredibly rewarding. Now, I have ebbed and flowed, as most people will, through their career. I want to give you straight up front, like, it will not always feel the most rewarding, and you're not always going to get to do exactly what you hoped you would do. But I will tell you, that's how it is everywhere. I mean, everywhere. That's right. Maintenance, it could be, Olympic level bobsledding or non-Olympic level bobsledding. It may not end up being exactly what you hoped it would be all the time, but there will be a lot of moments where it's exactly what you hoped it would be. And those moments are worth it. And really the most important part of this career field is the people that you get to engage with, and like you guys, like, having, it's just a cut above everybody else. I mean, it just clearly is that way. And you can do so much with such a capable force of human beings that want to do a lot. It's pretty badass to work with people like that. Like, you're not just trying to get the basics done. You're ready to maybe change the future of ST, and they want to help you do that. That's pretty cool. So I'd say, make sure you want those things and that you're ready to be in that environment. Have your personal life in order. Don't come in here if you're not, like, sound. Your family's not on board. If you have a family, like, that's going to be a big strain to them initially. It will continue to be a strain no matter what stage of your career you're in. And then really, work on yourself and be the best version of who you can be, and be exactly who you are. Do not come to us and try to be like this other, like, I think I know what kind of officer you're looking for, what kind of human you're looking for. No, we want you and what you offer to the force and your unique perspective. And if it's not the right perspective, then hey, it just might not be the right fit for you, or for the career field. And you just have to accept that as feedback and move forward and do something else. But that's what we're looking for, generally speaking. So you do those things, you come prepared, you have a true heart and a servant leader's heart. And, I think you'll generally be successful. So.
There it is. There's the IG reel right there.
Crushed it right there, baby. That's going to do numbers. Yeah.
Well, sir, definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast. We really enjoy it. It's been fun following you through your career, and man, thanks for everything that you're doing at STTS, you, Rosie, and the rest of the team, all the instructors that are putting things in on a day-to-day basis, because instructing is not easy. And it is a challenge. And Aaron alluded to it as well. It's like those dudes are there, an hour, 2 hours before the students, and they're there an hour, 2 hours afterwards. And they also have all the other stuff they've got to do. So definitely shout out and appreciate everything that the instructors are doing too. So 100%. That's it from us out here. We appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and tell us how terrible we are. Later, guys.
Awesome. Turn on.